Hello there. I hope you're well. I am Hiramoni and welcome to Get Set Global. Um, Today's episode is going to be all things inspirational. In traditional hierarchies, we still see women, fewer women in comparison to men in top level positions, women who build businesses from scratch, women who are recognized for the kind of innovations that they do. Um, I'm fortunate today to have a panel of guests who are breaking those hierarchies, rewriting new rules, and making a mark while climbing up the ladder. They truly are. Do you wonder what is it about these women that they do differently that sets them apart? Well, I think the best way to find out is to listen to them. Their wisdom is invaluable. Listening to people who are going for greater things in their own lives, people who are believing in who they are, I think they also encourage us to be the same. We can let their stories become models for our own successes. So, whether we want to become the CEO of a company or an entrepreneur or a mother, I think we can only be benefited. We can only be benefited by listening to those who are living it up already. And that's the idea of today's show. So, to bring to you a panel of guests who are inspirational, who have traveled the road to journey to success already. Um, and if I have not mentioned this before, they are the women of Assam. All my guests have a strong Assam connection. So, introducing my supremely talented, amazingly amazing panel of guests for today's show. So, my first guest, she is joining us from New York, and she is Mitra Kolita. Hi, Mitra.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Not at all. Great to have you here as well. So thank you. And I'll bring my next guest as well while you are here. Our next guest, she's joining us from Massachusetts, and she is Indrani Medhi Tees. Hi, Indrani.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Hira.
No,
Great to
not at
be
all.
here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I have to say that my third guest, who is to join from Tokyo, we still don't have her, so we will just bring her to the panel as and when she just connects to us. But thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to have you both here. Before we start, I thought I'll just do a brief introduction. I'll start with Mitra. So Mitra she was the senior vice president at CNN Digital until last week, I think. And now she has started her own media business. So congrats on that. Um, and Mitra Kolita is a veteran journalist. She is a prolific commentator. She also is author of two books. She's on the board of the Philadelphia Inquiries, I think it's called. And also, you are the visiting faculty at the Poynter Institute for Media Studies. You also do a weekly column for Fortune. And of course, you were born to an Assamese family, but you say that you have visited Assam many times to see your family, grandparents. And Mitra now lives in New York with her husband and two beautiful children. Great. And coming to Indrani, Indrani Medhi Cheese, she also grew up in Assam in Guwahati. She's a senior researcher at Microsoft. She is rewarded, she is recognized for her path-breaking innovations in technology for the emerging markets. She has been featured by Fortune magazine in the list 50 smartest people in technology. She has also been awarded Youth Icon Under 35 by India Today. She has been awarded Young Indian Leader, I think, by CNN IBN. And Indrani has also delivered talks, TEDx talks. Also, her research articles has been featured by leading conferences as well as journals. So that's Indrani. And I think I can see Bella Chandrani as well. So let me bring her to the panel. Too. Hello, Baidev.
Hello, how are you? Good evening, everyone.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining. So we find
Sorry, I'm late a bit.
No, you're perfectly okay. So I was just introducing everybody. So let me introduce Bella Chandrani as well. So Bella Baidev was born in Assam in Hibohagor, and she went to Japan in 1977. So since last 43 years, she is in Tokyo. She's a very successful entrepreneur in Japan. She's the first female merchant tea exporter from Northeast. She's the first Indian to import tea, India tea, into Japan, and also her brand, which is, I think, Shanti. That's the first Indian brand to market India tea in Japan. I think that's huge because the world knows Japan for its tea, and Bella Chandrani has made India tea popular in Japan. So that's huge. And she has also received the title Hakao, which I think means master or teacher of Indian tea. She has also written a book. So thank you so much to all of you. I think you all have done magnificent work in your fields. So yeah, I'm super excited, not just to know about your work, but also to know a little bit more about the person behind all that. So let me start with Mitra, if that's okay. So Mitra, I'm very keen to know, and I think I'm sure the audience as well, a bit more about your professional journey. How did you get here to where you are today? And being senior vice president at CNN Digital, it's a demanding role being at the top, and then you have a young family as well. So how is that also balancing both the high demanding professional life as well as personal life?
So it's a huge question. It's at the core of my day to day, and in some ways my life. But I think I can rewind. My parents came here in 1971 and 1973, and they didn't. It's not like in Assam sometimes people will say, "Oh, their father was a great journalist, and so of course this person became a journalist," or their father was a songwriter, and so he became a songwriter. In my family background, I don't know of any journalists, although there are great many storytellers, like in all Assamese families. And so I did grow up with a culture of storytelling and an embrace of media and politics in a way that felt very natural, right? My father had thousands of books in his home. I can't remember a time that our house was not defined by having literature and ideas always around. And then we also, in the United States, were raised with an expatriate Assamese extended family, right? So other immigrants who came here would be in our living room. Sometimes they would sleep over at night. And so I would listen to these stories. And I share this as not connecting that at the age of 6 or 7 to journalism, but I think ultimately for the path that I chose, it's very formative in why I ended up entering journalism. My parents also moved around a lot as when I was a child. So we were in New York City, then we were in the suburbs of New York, and then when I was 8 years old, we moved to Puerto Rico, which is an island off of the U.S. It's a Commonwealth territory. And there they speak Spanish mostly. And so this idea of being Indian or American was completely thrown into disarray because I had to learn another language, another culture. And something really interesting happened with my parents where they started to see more commonality in the people of Puerto Rico as in their native Assam, right? So there would be like odeng on the street and they would come home and make that into a curry. The people there had a drop-in culture of coming to your house and saying, you know, let me have a drink or let me have a snack or, you know, very informal familial culture. And so I share that because also we're still not in journalism, but as far as the ability to connect to people, and I think it's interesting because all three of your guests today are from outside of Assam, and yet the ability to connect to people leveraging your own culture and background becomes really important. And that's like my lesson from Puerto Rico. When we moved back to the mainland, to the US, I was 12 years old. And I was new in my school, and many of your viewers might know that feeling of being a newcomer, right? Whether in a society or a school, I had no friends. And so I joined the school newspaper as a way to just have an activity. And the first week in my new school, I got to interview the principal, right? And I thought, wow, essentially would be like the headmaster, right? In a typical school. And so I continued on this path of doing journalism as an extracurricular activity, but I always was amazed at how it represented such access to powerful people, the ability to connect to other cultures and other people's lives, and the ability to tell stories and know things before everybody else does, right? That's what I love about what we do. I can fast forward to the second part of your question because that's been almost 30 years since those days when I entered the newspaper in my school. I think the same pillars of my journalism have everything to do with why I've been somewhat or allegedly successful, as you framed it, in my career. And that's because no matter what happens, I know that I have family to help me out. I have both my mother and my mother-in-law, but also my father-in-law and my father, where anytime there's a professional opportunity, they have never let me think your family should hold you back. They actually make it so that the family is the reason that you embrace the opportunity, right? For two perspectives. One, what do you need help with? Is it food, your children? Do you have to travel a lot? Do you need somebody to be in your house? So that's one aspect. The second is that my parents always say this success that you've attained is not about you. It actually has everything to do with your community. And so when people celebrate you or my ability to be on shows like this, My Morning, Your Evening, is not because of my success. It is our community's success, right? It is a reflection of people wanting to celebrate themselves and be seen in their storytelling, but also in their storytellers. And so I don't let this tension between family and work, I think that there's often a tense construct between the two, whereas for me, those two things, without one, I wouldn't have the other. Harmony, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Yes, I would. But no, thank you so much, Mitra, for such a profound answer. Because people have seen you growing in your professional life, but they don't quite know how you got here, how you have said, from coming from Puerto Rico to back to America, how, it all helped you in some way being in different cultures. Also, I think something you have been very humble about not telling some of the other things, which I feel that when I looked at your background, you have worked in various places. So I suppose many people start, at a junior level, but I almost felt like wherever you felt like there isn't enough opportunities for you, then you will create your own opportunity, move somewhere where there is opportunity. And I think that says a lot, because it says about your confidence, about your abilities. Also, this whole thing, when you also said about your family support, that, whatever happens, it'll, I'll be fine, So I think being able to take those challenges, the risk taking, which I think all really helps in the road to success. So no, thank you. I'll have a lot more to talk about, Mitra. I'll come to you, but I'm coming back to Bella Baidu now. Bella Baidu, you started a business 43 years back, when women of your age wouldn't even think of anything like what you did. And I think what is so remarkable is the fact that the world knows Japan for the excellence of its tea and its tea quality. And you took the risk of actually bringing India to importing tea from Assam, from different parts of India, and giving Japanese people the taste of India tea, and made a big success out of it. So I want to know what prompted you to start a business like that, and how did you go about it? And probably you had hurdles as well on the way. How did you overcome them every time? Baidu, you need to unmute. You need to unmute your speaker. It's still unmute. I still mute. It needs to be unmuted. Sorry. Okay, let me see if I can do it for you. Yeah, go ahead.
I think, is it okay? Yes. Actually, our family, they are in the tea related to tea business. And I remember when I was in class 7, so I always wanted to be a manager in a tea garden. And I met B.M. Khaitan, the owner of Maclean and Magar, when I was in class 10 and deciding to go to college and all. So I asked him, Uncle, can I join one of your garden? So instead of he refusing me, he had told me so many things. Like, there are so many snakes, mosquito, and so many insect there. You have to wear a half pant. And I don't think so that being a girl, you will able to manage it. That was the sort of patience I have for my tea. And in 1977, when I joined Tea Board, I had a choice to go to UK or Australia or to Tokyo. As we know, the Assamese people, they have lots of relation in UK, in Australia, where I also have so many relation. And I want to take challenge. So I said, no, I want to go to Japan. When I decided that, I didn't know a single word of Japanese, only the picture we saw some Mount Fuji and the geisha people, nothing else, I landed in 1977 in April 7th. Yeah. And as I was working in the embassy to promote Indian tea, I had come across so many people who are showing really interest of good tea, because the tea had been coming to Japan from UK, like Twining and Lipton, and it is always a blended tea actually. So I wanted to introduce them our good quality of Assam tea, which have aroma and liquor and the mellowness. And I have seen that, like every food item, like wine and all, you have paired them. Which tea will go with which cuisine. Like Japanese people know their best tea, and they accordingly that they take their tea with their food. So like non-Japanese food always prefer to go for black tea. Either which end of the dinner they go for milk tea, or during the dinner they go for a Darjeeling straight tea, which has a aroma but color is very light. And if you talk about the struggle or hurdle, yes, there are many. Main is the language. And now, because we are approaching Olympic, it was happened to be in 2020 when before the Corona thing started, and that's why the people had started learning English. Even they have trained all the taxi drivers and the hotel boys and what you call it. So everything is now in English, most of the thing. But when I landed here, even the train station names were written in Japanese. So in the beginning, if I want to go somewhere, I used to stand in the train. I never used to sit because I might miss my station, the whatever kanji I have learned that where I'm going, I have to get down there. So I always stand next to the window. So like that. And, but, Japanese people, they have, they are very kind people to be very frank, they suppose you want to go to a place you don't know, you just saw the name where you want to go, they will catch hold your hand and they will take you there without speaking a word, because he cannot speak English, I cannot speak Japanese. For the tea, actually, I wanted to show them best of India. you know it's a boutique sort of a tea. And like tea, the people have been knowing mostly tea bags and all, but loose tea with aroma, with mellowness and all, with golden tips we call Assam tea, which they haven't seen it. So when we showed to them, they were so surprised. The India also produce this type of tea because they are much aware of the Japanese tea and the Chinese tea. And I also have two children, and lots of help I got from my husband, my children. And I always wanted to keep a relation with India, especially in Assam. So, as you had mentioned, that I have written a book. I have written a book in Assamese so that the village student and the children they can read it. And with my help of my husband and my daughter, I had put 44 pictures in the book so that they, if they cannot visit the country also, they can visualize the what is Japan, how is Japan. And I think that's why I have put my both the daughter in Assam Valley School so that they can be a Assamese as well as a Indian.
Wonderful. That's so wonderful to hear all of this. And I think my panel of guests is very humble today. They are not saying enough all the about the achievements and what how they got there. You have been very humble as well. But I also see a lot of that skill of wanting to learn in you, because going to a new country in itself is hard. I think all of the people in the panel will know this, who will know better than that. But then you had this other trouble of having to learn a new language. And then when you introduce something new like India tea, I feel that he had a bigger purpose as well, because like you said, you wanted people to know what it is like taste India tea. And for that also it's a different kind of learning, to learn the market well, their taste, their, how they do the ritual around tea. So I really feel that you have been a lifelong learner, and I think that's something for people to take away for sure. Um, Coming to Indrani, so Indrani, you are featured as one of the 50 smartest people in technology. I think that's big. Um, you also have received many awards for the research, the technology that you have come up with in the emerging markets. So would like to know a little bit more about what it is. In, of course, in simple language so anyone can understand. Also, I think I really want to know what was the driving force? What drove you to come up with something like this and make it happen?
So thank you once again for having me. Really excited to be here today. So I work in the Technology for Emerging Markets group at Microsoft Research. My primary research is, it looks at how do we design technologies such that, somebody who is not literate, who cannot read or write, somebody who's never been to school, when they first access a technology, they should be able to use it with minimal or no external assistance. They should be able to use it independently. So that's the goal of the project. So one of the ideas that we had used was, instead of text in these interfaces, we used images and voice and video so that it takes off the pressure to read. So that was one idea. But there's many other features, that we have used to simplify navigation for somebody who's not literate, who's a novice user of technology. And I think one of the turning points of the projects was just through very immersive field. I do a lot of field work. I go into rural areas of not just India. I've been to Philippines, South Africa, where I've talked to people. So I do a lot of field work. So one of the turning points of the project was realizing that non-literacy is not just about the inability to read text. It seems correlated with many other things. For example, cognitive issues and various socio-cultural issues. So how do you take all of that into account while designing technologies for people who are unable to read and who are new to technology? So yeah, that's about my research. In terms of, you said, what motivated me? So, growing up in Assam, I have seen a lot of low literate people. We had domestic helpers who could not read or write. When I was working in Bangalore, we had a domestic worker who had a low-end phone, but she would carry, multiple sheets of paper with her with phone numbers written on them. So I would see all that, and I thought, why not do something to make her life simpler? So that was like one of the driving factors to, design technologies that are accessible to everyone. So yeah, that's my primary research, and that's the motivation, I think.
That's super cool, Indrani. And I think you are one of the pioneers in that field, because now there are work going on for the emerging markets. But at the time when you started, I think people were not talking about it so much. I know that you are also now mentoring and guiding people like, in IIT Guwahati, IIT Bombay, and so on. But I just want to say to all the young girls, anyone who is listening, you know what? It's quite cool to be a researcher or an innovator or a scientist. I know that you like movies, you probably like shopping, but you also like to innovate. So I think it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much.
No, I think, all of you are such role models and give hope for a better future. Absolutely, it does. Mitra, I had been wanting to ask you this question. So, you're a woman of color. So I want to know whether you have ever felt or faced discrimination of any sort in your professional career, especially while climbing up the ladder. And how did you manage if that happened, or what would be your advice if someone is in that situation? How can they navigate through that? How can they manage? And also, I wanted to know, because I have seen you being an advocate of diversity. You have been teaching journalism of color. You have written books on migration. So yeah, is it also because these subjects are close to you that you want to create more awareness? Talk to me more about it.
Sure. So, whether I face discrimination, it's a tough question, because I could say, well, not overtly, right? Nobody has ever said to me, "You are a woman of color, you cannot enter this room," right? On the other hand, there have been many rooms that do not include me. And so I think that is a form of the discrimination. And so much of my career has been navigating, how do I get in that room? How do I pull up a chair? How do I find my voice within a certain meeting? And then how do I get to the place where I'm the one conducting the meeting? And then how do I start to include others around the table, so that it's not just me who's benefited, but it's actually, suddenly we've changed not just the whole dynamic of who's in the room, but to Indrani's point, we've changed the dynamic of an entire product, because we started to think about, who are we not reaching, or who are we not accessing, in a complete, strict business capitalistic sense of that, right? And so my response to you is that because I've always been able to prove value, whether I'm bringing in revenue, I'm bringing in audience, I'm bringing in stories that win awards, that people talk about the next day, the next month. What I've had to do is to always put the value proposition I offer at the front instead of saying the world owes it to me to be in that room, right? Now, I say that and I kind of cringe a little bit because I think there is a generation behind me that very rightfully is asking, isn't that unfair that you actually had to be maybe twice as good, 3 times as good, 4 times
Discrimination of
in order to get into. And so I think this is a tension among women in the workplace right now. I think it's something that I'm learning all over again in my career because my path was actually a pretty traditional path, right? I worked hard, I kept my head down, I kept showing this value, and then I think it worked out pretty well for me. I think what I owe other people is to ask the question of, was it inclusive? Were we inclusive enough? Because for the most part in those rooms, it's just me, right? When it comes to women of color or just women or even any person of color, unfortunately, I serve a few of those functions and it isn't necessarily a diverse room. So that's how I would respond to that question. There was another half of that. What was the second half of what you had just asked me on? Oh, on diversity and speaking about it.
Yes, I kind of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've been in mainstream media for about 25 years, if you include my college years where I was also working full time. And I've never had diversity in my title, right? I've never been chief diversity officer or recruiting or, I've never been a reporter covering race. I've never covered gender. And yet those identities are core to the journalism that I do. And so for me, I think the path to success has always been take the core part of the business and rethink it, right? Take the core part of what we do, which is, at CNN, I was handling our breaking news team, right? That's the most important team that it gets at CNN. If it's not breaking news, then, that is why people turn on the television and watch CNN, is because something has broken. They want to be a part of that. And so for me, it's very important that I am in the primary functions of organizations and able to bring my perspective in to change how we work instead of making these things that I work on side projects and not core to the business.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Because I think, especially when you work for such an important role, which has got a commercial side as well, I think you really have to see how you can bring all these different subjects, still while trying to make profit. But I really liked when you said that nobody tells you that you can't enter this room because of you're women of color, but there are rooms where actually you're not invited either. And I'm not saying you, but in general. And there is something called, I think you would know this, called unconscious bias, which basically is almost like, when we look for friends, it's our human nature to go for friends who look like us, who speak like us, we have similar life experiences. I almost feel it is similar in workplaces as well. When we hire, when we promote, when we mentor, we go for people who look like us. And that's not always consciously we are being biased, but it's just the human nature. I almost feel that we are at a stage where we almost really need to create this awareness of unconscious bias so that people are conscious about being unconsciously biased. So I think that's what you were saying as well. But no, thank you for bringing that up all. Coming to Bella Baidu. So we touched upon this already, that you started a business at a time when women couldn't think of anything like it. Most women, they didn't even probably know that they can also think big, dream big. And you went on to make a business successful, that too in a foreign land. So do you think that you had a different kind of thinking or a different kind of attitude, which actually led you to do what you are doing, and making it so successful, apart from all the family support, because I think you have said already about your support from your husband as well. But what else you think you have in terms of your mindset and attitude?
Very beginning, I like to take challenge, you know. And like everyone have a dream from the very beginning. Like children when usually my children also talk about when they see something, they said they want to be a cake person, to whom they wanted to have a cake shop. Later on, they said no, I wanted to be a doctor. So it's a dream keep on changing. Even I also have lots of dreams and all. And it's not that you think differently. You should do something differently so to people that you can do it, you know. And like when they come over the tea, uh, I knew it that I was determined to do it from the very beginning. When I came here, the deputation is only for 4 years. You have to go to another country and all. And when I landed here in Japan, I find out that Japanese and Japan and Assam have so much of relation, to look at. They have tea. In Assam, we have tea. They have a national costume, the kimono. We have mekhala sadar, and they have weave also, weaving. So it was, it came to my heart that I should do something in this country where they will acknowledge me here with my work and all. So I didn't find it very difficult to settle myself here. And I was very much determined from the very beginning that if you able to convince people that what I am doing it, if they have confidence, I had confidence with me, and I want the people should also get the same confidence from me. And um, about the uh, challenge and what I want to do different, it is, you know, mm, he- how to express it, because I'm so used to giving interview in Japanese. Mm. And but from the very beginning, I was focused on tea only. I didn't want to do anything else. So many people have
Mm,
approached me from Assam. Why don't you do some cloth business like mekhala sadar and all? As you know, in Japan have so many Indian, very few numbers Indian we have. Now we have only 20 Assamese people here. Only from Assam, only 20 people. And all over Japan, it must be 40,000 Indian here. And out
okay.
of that, around 50% or 40% living in Tokyo. So it
Okay.
is, and because tea, though tea is very hard, is uh, what you call it in software, you will be talking about hardware and software. Tea is a hard thing, but history and when the dignity and the elegance when you make a tea and all, you can talk on that, you know. So as I had mentioned, it's pairing of tea and all. So it have really a good history and a long history on tea. So that's why I decided that I should stick to tea only, and I was so much firm, determined to hold the tea.
Yes,
I don't know
yeah.
whether I answered your question rightly or not.
No, you really have. You really have. I wish I could speak in Japanese like you, by the way. But I think what you have said, one is determination. I think that came up quite a lot of time, and I think determination to also tell people about Assam tea, also create that relationship between Japan and Assam that you spoke about. But I also saw a lot of self-belief, I think, because you knew that you can do something about tea because there is a passion there and you had a purpose there. You just didn't want to make money, doing a business and make money, but there was a huge mission and passion and self-belief. So I saw all of that. That was my question, that what kind of mindset, and I think you have answered that, so thank you. Indrani, coming to you. So you are what I was going to say. Yes, so we still see some of the sectors and industries being still, we see more male, like male dominated. You work as a senior researcher for a giant IT company. You represent the company at conferences, seminars, and TEDx talks. Has it been a bit of a challenge once in a while as a woman to rise above men? Have you felt that way ever?
Mm, so the place where I work and the research community that I interact with, I think there is a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion. So, we have unconscious bias training as part of our work. So I think I don't know if there's been challenges in the conventional sense. Having said that, in spite of a very supportive, work environment, having a supportive spouse, flexible work schedules, I think just being able to, as a working mother, being able to balance work and family is always a struggle for me. I think that's something I struggle with. So it's a day-to-day thing. So that's what I would say. So and I've been experiencing this more and more, and I'm pretty sure a lot of working mothers would identify with that. So yeah, I guess in many in I think a lot comes from social conditioning. We take a lot of burden ourselves because we think that we have to excel in our careers, but at the same time we have to be a good housewife, and so there's a lot of social conditioning which comes into play, and we take a lot of things on ourselves. Maybe people are not even expecting that of us, right? So I think I think that I'm increasingly aware of. I saw my grandmother who was a working woman. She started the first school in her district. I saw my mother, who was an excellent mother. So I often kind of experience going back and forth. What do I want to be? So I think that is a primary challenge that I experience in my day-to-day life, I guess.
I absolutely love this because I think this is going to be another topic almost, this whole super women concept. I mean, where has this come from? Why do we have to have this need to be good and perfect at everything? Not really, nobody has defined that. But I think you're right, all the social conditioning that leads it to be like that. But I also feel, I think at work, I think you are probably, that way you're lucky that you're in a better place where you don't see so much of biases, but there would be organizations who still are not doing a lot of work. And I also feel that how women are seen and how we perceive leadership to be, the gap, almost like leadership is seen as someone standing up and delivering bold statement, but leadership can also be about showing empathy to your clients, to your employees, building trusted relationships. So I almost feel those things, those cultural shifts have to happen as well. But no, thank you. Your struggle, I'm sure a lot of working women have this. So I think just one of the brain tattoos to keep in mind is that you don't have to be great at everything. You can't have it all the time.
Yeah, that's very well. Yeah.
Mitra, so I'm really eager to know your viewpoint on this. I mean, through your work, your success story, you have actually shown women what's the possible, what all is possible. So what is your wish? What do you hope for every girl, every woman of the world? what change do you want to see, and what would you want to see to both men and women that can help to make these changes?
So I was chuckling when Indrani was talking because of the expectation. So even within Assam, which I think among the states is one of the more liberal for women, I'm laughing because I was thinking of when my family sometimes comes over, not my immediate family, but extended family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, and we'll be serving the dinner. And as many of you know, it's very traditional to serve and then for the women to eat last, right? And because of the way that our work schedules are, I always arrive home and I'm so hungry, and and so I found myself, serving myself, sitting down and eating and looking at everyone around me and thinking, oh, I forgot this tradition I'm supposed to do. So I think some of it is to make that rethinking of tradition not so revolutionary, but almost participatory, right? How do you not make it okay for a woman who's worked the whole day to come home and have something to eat, and make that somehow something revolutionary, but create a community that, is supportive of how we not just support that woman, but it's like a two-way street, right? So I think a lot about, I guess for Indian women, I think there is a built-in awareness that sometimes the price you pay for following convention, for conceding to tradition, the payoff might be, as in my case, like, I'm married to a Punjabi. I fast for Karva Chauth, which I know a lot of liberal feminist women have feelings about. And yet there's not a single time I can think of in my 16 years as a mother where my mother-in-law hasn't come to help me if I need something, right? If I'm traveling and so I think about that as non-transactional, right? Nobody has said to me, well, if you fast for Karva Chauth, your mother-in-law will be happy with you, and so therefore she'll watch your child. Nobody has ever said that. And yet, implicit in me following certain traditions is that we also follow the Indian tradition of your family being really the bedrock of your support. And it's a little bit different for me compared to Bela Baido and Indrani, because my parents are in the United States, right? So I benefit from not being the immigrant, but being a second generation that is able to actually take the best of the first generation, the best of our adopted country, and kind of create a new path. And so I guess my hope for girls, as you're asking, would be support in forging whatever that path looks like, right? And knowing that it's very different for every woman. That for some women, the idea of fasting for their husbands would be, a insulting act. They would never engage in it. That's their right. For other women, they recognize this is an important holiday to their family, their tradition. In my case, my husband fasts with me, so we figured out a way to get an equal holiday out of this. And I say this because it's fresh on the mind, because we just had this 2 weeks ago. So I think I'll leave it there as far as the ability to support that path looks like.
Yes, yeah, no, I think I like that quite a lot. Almost, I see it this way, that there isn't a book of rules for women or girls have to be this way, right? I mean, they can be what they want to. They can pick up what they want to, like all your examples, if you're hungry, you will come and eat, It really doesn't have to be so associated with traditions. Karwa Chauth, if you want to, just go for it. I mean, there is never a book of rules. We create them. I think it's just nice for people to know that. And I also sometimes feel that in schools, probably it's a really good idea to include something like positive gender stereotyping. I think that also helps men, the boys, when take it out of school as citizens, as employees, as managers. I think they will, set higher standards in terms of all of these things become a norm. So I think everything that you highlighted, I think that's how I see it, that, there isn't as such a book of rules to follow. But thank you for all that beautiful, words. Coming to Bella Baidu. So because you have done business, so I think I got to ask you this. So almost like everyone has a talent. A lot of it is left as hidden. Some don't know what to do with them. For example, if someone wants to start a business, it's quite confusing how and where to start. What are the steps to follow? Not everyone has financial support or family support. So, what would be your advice to all of that? I mean, what do you think? What steps people can follow to start a business without having to invest much?
Actually, you have to study the country where you want to do business. Every country have a different taste and palates. So when I said that Lipton and Twining doing the blend, they do different blend for Japan and different blend for the other countries. So you have to know the taste of the country where you want to export it. And these days, there are so many rules and regulations, residual problems and all, geographical that lines and all. So really you have to study them. And I will say that if you can take a internship in a tea company, or there are lots of auction houses and all now. So where if you join as an intern, you can learn tea tasting and all. So those are my few advices.
Okay. Now, thank you. So you're basically saying that the market that you are going to or planning to penetrate must understand that market well, what their tastes are, how they do tea, and all of that. But would you also say that before thinking of exporting, it's a good idea to taste the product in the domestic market and see if the product is successful, the tea is successful in the domestic market, and then think of exporting? Would you suggest that, or do you think that's not so required?
No, that is also required because you have to talk to people, isn't it? You have to show how the tea had been drink in India from the
Hmm.
very beginning. Now in everywhere, milk tea and masala tea is taking a boom. Even in China also, people started drinking milk tea, where they had been drinking all the straight tea throughout the day. Only if you go to China, you'll find out they in a table they always have some tea leaves and a cup full of hot water. As soon as you finish, the another hot water, another few water had been again poured, and they started drinking the whole day. Now the trend is that they're going for milk tea. So people keep on changing. You have to visit, or and you must know what is produced in which district. Like when you sell about Darjeeling tea, you should know how to prepare it, how to brew it, and how to drink it. Because we don't recommend that lemon tea should be added in the Darjeeling. Whereas for Nilgiri, it is good for iced tea because it have a good color and it doesn't become cream down also. And for Assam tea, you go for instead of lemon, where the lemon tea is very popular, we have developed that instead of lemon, we should add a orange, you know. And very funny thing, Tea Board of India had named it Shalimar tea. Why, the tea, the orange and the tea color goes so well, the two combination of color. They had compared this with the Kashmiri garden called Kashmir, Shalimar Bagh. So those are the history. So if you know the history, when you talk about Assam tea, how to prepare Assam tea, if you add one or two story like this, people like it. So those things are very important, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. I think this is a real takeaway for people who are in the tea business. I think people really do love stories attached to a brand. like you said. And also, I think the rituals around tea, how this is good and everything. Yeah, this is a really, really good advice. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Um, Indrani, you have been academically very, very bright. You know, you did your PhD from IIT and all that. Um, so some can say that for someone like you with your background, it is easy to be successful at work. Um, I want to know your viewpoint. Is it easy? Like, has it got anything? You know, is there a relationship between being bright and being successful at work? What's your take?
Well, I mean, I think there definitely were some privileges coming from a certain background. I grew up in a family of educationists. My grandfather was a legislator. My grandparents were freedom fighters in India's independence. It was a very academic environment. Uncles were all professors. So coming from a certain background, definitely, I had certain privileges and advantages. I was fortunate to attend good schools and colleges. In Guwahati, I went to St. Mary's, Guwahati. For my high secondary, I was in Cotton College. So very fortunate, and I'm very grateful for these influences and experiences. Having said that, I think I've also had to work very hard. I don't think there've been any shortcuts to hard work. So just being surrounded by people, for example, where I work, who are very smart, I think that's always kind of kept me on my toes. I've had to constantly work on myself. So yeah, I mean, my colleagues have always inspired me to do better, and I think I've had to work hard. But I wouldn't say that there haven't been privileges or advantages coming from a certain background, or growing up in a certain time and place. So yeah.
Okay, no, wonderful. I think I feel that, if you academically have scored higher and all of that, it's good in terms of getting a job, getting that salary, but that probably doesn't have a direct relationship with being successful at work. And
Yeah.
once I no, because I interviewed a CEO of a really big company. I wouldn't take his name. So I asked, what do you look for when you hire somebody, especially for an important role? And he said, drive.
Mm.
Somebody who has the drive to push, to produce better results, to be great. And like you said, always be in a room of, where there are more smarter people than you around. That's when you push yourself. So
This
I
is,
think,
I mean, yeah, I've been like very passionate, and but yeah, I've also had to like really work on myself, and I think I have a healthy amount of self-doubt. I feel like I'm not doing enough. I could do better. So yeah, so that I mean, it has to be the right amount, I guess. So a certain amount of self-doubt has definitely prompted me to kind of work more on myself, and yeah.
yeah. I think Indrani, you have really picked up a good point there. It's that humility that I don't know everything. I have to keep learning all the time. I think that is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so
Um, Mitra, let's talk about Assam, because you have said you have visited Assam, you have gone to visit your family. Um, do you connect yourself as an Assamese? And what do you love visiting about Assam?
So I definitely do connect as an Assamese. I think anyone who knows me, in fact, it's almost a point of among my Indian friends that I'm Assamese is like something that they constantly make fun of me for, because I always put that before the Indianness, right? And so, and I think if you'll see, all three of us are wearing some form of like Assamese identity unintentionally. We did not plan it, but I think that we definitely hold. I mean, I can sense that from all three of our remarks that we hold a special affinity for home. Um, so for me, I was not born in Assam. I was born here in New York City. Why am I so connected to this place? And I've really thought about this a lot. After college graduation, I did a Discover India tour, and I went to 5 cities and toured monuments and tried to understand Indian history better. And my conclusion was actually that for me, being Assamese and my connection with the place will always be about my family and the people, right? And this might sound very basic to people who've lived some life. But, when you're in your teens, early 20s, you're still trying to kind of figure out who you are. I think there's a few reasons. One, my parents would take us there every few years. And so we were not an especially wealthy family. It's not like we were not, we were very middle class, but to go to India every year was impossible. It's just too expensive with a family of 5 to go every year. So we would go every 3 or 4 years. And so that also represented almost like you would miss it so much in between, right? And for someone who didn't grow up with family in the US, to not see people for years and years, but to be so accepted upon arrival was like something I've never experienced in my life, right? And so I truly think my connection to Assam is one of the deepest love I've ever experienced in my entire life. And that is a love that is unquestionable. It's not rooted even in my personality and that of the person who's loving me. It's just because we come from the same place and the same family. That's very rare, right? And so to grow up with that kind of love starts to paint a picture of a place. And then you can, from the people, you move on to what an amazing place we come from that values nature, that is in so many ways for women a much better state to be from than any, with all due respect to the other states. But, I grew up with aunts who are the core of the family. Like if it were not for those women, people would not have been able to eat the next day. I mean, these women are like the backbone of the family's economic livelihood and just stability. And so for me to see that was such a great symbol and signal early in my life to, almost to the point that when people say, oh, you're a woman who's made it, like, I don't even, I think, well, gosh, you want to talk about making it. Let me introduce you to some of my relatives who really persevered and had to get to a place of success. And then the last thing I'll just say is a village and extended family. So my parents both come from very big families where, I will be very nostalgic and think about what it means when you have 20, 40 people all in one house and the activity is like constant, right? And what it means to be a child in the middle of that is probably the deepest joy I've ever experienced, because you're laughing, you're eating, someone's crying, there's drama. Oh, somebody just arrived, they don't get along with this person. I mean, so to understand the complexity of what many of our organizations, whether you're selling tea or working in a corporate America or trying to, we are raised within complexity, but it is, you see how actually functional it can be. That's the nostalgia piece. I know for many people within that, it can be difficult when you're in it. I don't want to take away from that experience. So that to me is what being Assamese is. And then I should just mention briefly, between 2006 and 2009, we actually lived in New Delhi. And so for the first time in my life, I had an opportunity for much more regular relationships with my family. And so now our love, I like to say, is actually rooted in the people we are and the causes and morals that we are guided by. So that, I ended up with very, very strong attachment that started as a child, but actually as an adult is something that I now, it's not even that I plan to pass it on to my children. They have a very personal relationships with people.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I think, what can I say? I think it's just Assamese your way of life. I mean, just said it. I think you don't have to feel it. That's who you are. And I seriously didn't know so much, your connection with Assam, that you lived in Delhi as well, and the way you feel and the way you have put together. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely, it is. And also, I mean, I feel both for Indrani and you, Mitra, and for Bella Baidu as well. The timings are so odd on a Sunday, like, 9 o'clock in the morning, 11:30 at night, but you are here for the people of Assam, aren't you? So that also is a great thing, I suppose. Bella Baidu. Um, so because we are talking about women, so I want to know your view. Like, we are still in a society where we still celebrate, we still wish for baby boys to be born. Our still roads are not safe for women and girls. We still don't have equal opportunities for women. So what would be your take? What do you think is that needs to change for women to see more of an equal society? What would be your take? Tough one.
Mm, actually, everyone view are different. To be very frank, I have two daughters. Okay, I am so blessed that God had been so kind to us that I have two daughters. My thinking is like that. And when I was in school, my father was a member of parliament. You won't believe he used to take me for all his meeting instead of taking my brother. So totally different background. So sometimes when I talk to my husband, I said, no, when I used to go to school, I didn't go to college in Guwahati. I went to Baroda. As I mentioned in the very beginning that I want to take challenge. I had landed in Baroda, where the hostel I stayed 5 years. It's totally a vegetarian hostel. And like a Assamese, we take always fish and meat every day. And I landed there, stayed there for 5 years. So when we were in Guwahati that time, so roads are very safe, and we didn't have that feeling, the discrimination between boys and girls. Of course, I don't deny it that it is not there. It is there. But I think we had created that, you know, because uh, another thing, when you say that women are not strong enough and all, we need more equality to women. And I think when you talk on that subject, you are proving that you are not superior. Uh, that can be, it is only to tell you my viewpoint, So I always think that I am not inferior compared to any man. Well, you talk in business, raising a child, looking after the house, going out, doing anything. I think I equal. I have treated my children like that. I always say that no difference with boys and girls. That is my own view. But I definitely want a society where everyone should be look same and it should be safe.
Yeah, no, thank you, Baidu. I think you have been lucky to have been like that, I must say, because we still live in a world where millions and millions girls still don't have education. They don't have opportunities, they don't have medicine. And I have to say one story. When I think 3 years back, I was traveling from Guwahati to Jorhat, which took me about 9.5 hours. I
Wow.
yeah, because roads were not so good. But I was shocked to see there wasn't a female washroom in the entire journey that you could go and save and just for females. And that was a little bit shocking to see that, do we need more women's voice while
Mm.
making these policies, because this is like quite something. It's like human right issue, right? Someone may say that no, there are, but at least as tourists, I didn't find any. So, I think there is a lot of still work needs to be done. But I have to say, I think you are blessed. Yeah.
Like, I don't blame anyone, but if you few 1 year ago, I don't want to name, one film star had been making a tourist ambassador, and it had been paid a huge amount of money. So some
Yes.
people had written that time, they, instead of spending that much of money to her or to that actor or actress, instead of, you should, as you had mentioned, when I also travel to the tea gardens and all, there are no
Yeah.
any stoppage where you can go to a toilet, you can refresh yourself, eat something good in a better, in a, what you call, a clean atmosphere. So that someone had mentioned it, that instead
Yeah.
of doing all this, you should have made something for tourists, and you are making them ambassador. So you are
Yeah.
trying to call tourists.
Yes.
So how are you going to invite tourists to Assam unless and until you don't repair or you don't uplift all these facilities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I mean, tourism, how are you even advertising it if there isn't washroom, right? Yeah. So wonderful. Um, Indrani, so you grew up in Guwahati, and what what do you think that what have you embraced from the culture and the society of Assam that has helped you to shape up your personality?
Wow, that's a great question. So I grew up in an environment in Guwahati where I think it was not just about academics, but I think the focus was on all-round development. So I grew up in the neighborhood of Digholi Pukhuri in Guwahati, and yeah, it was wonderful. It was a place which was not just academic. There was professors' colony close by, but it was also very rich in arts and culture. There was district library, there was Robindra Bhavan. I attended the Assam Fine Arts and Crafts Society art school on weekends, and it was amazing because from a young age I was able to meet with artists and filmmakers and writers, and and because of those influences from a younger age, I watched good cinema. There was the Guwahati Book Fair, which my family really looked forward to. It was like a really big deal. So I think all of these things are so essentially Assamese, right? I mean, just interest in the arts and culture. So I think, yeah, those influences have really shaped who I am today, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful I grew up in Tikoli Pukuri at a certain time. Yeah, I think, yeah.
You talk about Digholi Pukhuri, I remember Robindra Bhavan, which is just
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we went there to watch so many, shows, and so yeah, it was like arts
very,
and
very rich.
culture, a very rich environment, I would say. So those have those have really shaped who I am and what I'm interested in. So it was not just, you have to read textbooks and do well in studies, but it was like all-round development, and that comes from, I think it was very
Yes.
Assamese, that experience of growing up in that,
Yeah, no, beautiful.
yeah,
Because I also
place.
feel when you have that kind of an exposure, you have more respect for other cultures, diversity, become
Yeah,
open-minded. Yeah.
right, definitely. Definitely. I mean, especially I think my art school uh, had a great influence on me, the kind of people I met and the kind of things I appreciated.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So because we're running out of time, I have got a very quick question for all of you. So, and then we'll wrap up probably. So I'll start with Mitra. So because this is all about how to be at the top and how to be successful as well. Although I'm so aware that success, has a different definition for everybody, but because of the subject, Mitra, what would be your top tips? How to be at the top? What would be your tips?
Okay. So I will steal from my grandparents. So my paternal grandparents were in Hodia, And I've been thinking about how I divided the tactics of running a contracting business and a farm to corporate America. So this would be my tip: is that my grandfather was a very honest person. He was a contractor. They also had some farming. And my grandmother always seemed to worry that because he was so honest, it would, as you know, honest people are supposed to finish last in business, right? And so she she would talk about this. And I remember shortly before she died, I did an interview of her. And she told me that before the workers would go out every morning, she would feed them like a big feast, right? And I said, well, why did you do that in the morning instead of when they come back, right? And she said, because no matter how much I yell at them later, if they're on a full stomach, it doesn't matter, right? And so I relate this because so much of you asked Indrani the question about, is it enough to be smart to get ahead? And I think the answer is no, right? You must be a combination of smart and honest, as my grandfather was, but you also have to have the emotional capacity to give people if you're going to demand from them, right? And so I think a lot about how in their example, I've been able to balance, yes, we approach our work with intellect and smarts and vigor, but we also must approach it with compassion and empathy for those who are executing the work, as well as the people around us who enable us to do the work. And so I think those two things are of equal importance. And it's taken me, some decades to come to that conclusion, because for the most part, we work in a place that definitely values the former, right? And the irony is that it's my grandmother who teaches me that lesson, who never attended school a day in her life, was essentially illiterate, right? And so for me to learn that lesson from her as somebody who makes her living with words is actually even more meaningful, right? Because I think you have to be open to those lessons, and they hopefully will mean something later in your life. So I think I can leave it there.
Wonderful. Yeah. So you said smart, obviously, that's there, but then empathy, also emotional intelligence. I think you touched upon honesty. All of that is important. It's a package while you're trying to go up the ladder. Lovely. Bella Baidu. So you have been busy doing your, setting up your business, building up your business. During this process, what have you missed? What have you missed from your life?
Miss,
Missed in the sense,
could you please repeat?
yeah, did you miss anything? Like because you didn't have
Ah,
enough time and you miss?
if I say no, it will be I'm not true to myself. Yes, I have. Like as I said that I came here and I stay here. So I miss my all my friends and family, this, the functions and all. Though I was lucky that I had to visit India every 3 months to buy tea because I do the tasting also. So I was visiting India. So I make it a point that if there is any marriage in our family, if they haven't invite me, I will definitely join. That's the only chance I keep joining people, you know. And to miss, because I wanted, as I mentioned, that I wanted to my children to grow as a Indian, and I had sent in to Assamese school. That every parents want that our children should be with them, and the children also same time wanted the same thing. That in our young age we are put in a hostel, or their mother was not there with her all the times and all. So those things, they few memories and all I must have missed. But I am happy that because that stand we had taken. So I am proud of my both the daughters, and they are proud of me that Mama had done so much, and she had been doing this for Japanese people as well as she's doing for the Assamese people, because she is introducing Assam tea to the Japan. So
Yes.
actually, again, the thing comes at the balance. You have to be balance yourself, and you have to get success or something. In Japan, there's a word saying called "Isinu we ni sannenkan." If you rub a stone every day for 3 years, the stone will melt. So Japanese people say you keep on doing the same thing till you are satisfied, you know. And there's another saying in Japanese, I really love it, I like it, I like to use it. Hosoku nagaku. It's not, the fire should not be with the hay because it's burnt in a minute. It should be like a wood, slowly, and long. Hosoku nagaku, it should be small, very tiny, what you call it, small and long. The relation should be very thin and long. So I believe in these two phrases of Japan, and that's
Yeah.
make me now what I
Yeah.
am.
Absolutely. No, not just your daughters, but all of us are proud, everything that you're doing for Assam actually in
Thank you
Japan.
so much.
It's a big deal. No, thank you. Um, so you obviously have said that you are all rounder because how you have grown and everything. So if you were not a senior researcher and innovator, what would you have liked to be and why?
Oh, what would I have liked to be if I was not a researcher? I think a wildlife photographer, maybe. Growing up in Assam, I think we all have a deep connection with the wilderness and nature. And yeah,
Have you
whenever
have you
uh,
done any wildlife photography?
I mean, just very minimum. Maybe I was when I was traveling in Bandhavgarh with my friends, like spotting tigers in the wild. Maybe I've done some, but no, I mean, not like professionally, of course. But yeah, I think I find whenever I'm overwhelmed with work and I just like go taking a walk in the woods. I find it very recharging, refreshing. So yeah, I think something to do with the wilderness and nature, and maybe a wildlife photographer. I'm not sure, but I think that also kind of connects to being from Assam because we have such deep connections. So we used to go to Mongoldoy, which is where my father is from, and just there was a pond in our backyard and like bamboo orchard. So I feel a special connection to nature. So maybe that's what I think.
Oh, maybe one day. Best wishes for all of it. Maybe one day that will all happen. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Hey, listen, we obviously are at the end of today's show, but thank you so much to each one of you for being here, sharing all your stories, giving advice, and I just felt your wisdom just not was invaluable, but I find them quite infectious as well. And I, like I said before, role models like you give a lot of hope for a better future. So thank you for everything, for being here, and I would say that look after yourself and goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
at all. All right.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's show. I think one thing was prominent about all my guests, that today's women, they are women who adopted the mindset of growth. They were not sold to the idea that they can't have or they do not have the ability to be great. They are in a continuous state of self improvement. They are curious to learn new things, acquire new skills. They tell to be open minded to new opportunities. And I say that let's surround us with people like them who help us to think differently, to know that growth and comfort, they do not coexist. With that, thank you for watching today's show. Also, thank you to the Sentinel, and sending you best wishes for a healthy and a happy life. Do look after yourself, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.